I went through all the Yerushalmis I found there. I can't find the Kesuvos. Just go on.
Okay.
Just
looking together. Okay, ham it out. The Sula, normally we have other people in the shiur. I don't know where they are tonight. The Sula, so Akash Baruch Hu sent you. Akash Baruch Hu sent you, though. That's Ashkach. Yes, it's on tape. Okay. Yes, he did. Alachada. Besula Amona Grusha, a woman who's a Besula, however, she's an Amona, a Grusha, or Chalutza Min HaNisuin. In other words, she was fully married to somebody else before. So with the second time around, Kesuvos Amona, she only gets $100 for a Kesuva. If they don't have Besulim, then so what? She still gets $100. It turns out she was lying and she didn't have Besulim. It wasn't expected. Hagiores Vashfui, the Gemara is going to discuss in great detail. Hagiores, a girl who was Megayer, Vashfui, a girl who was redeemed from captivity, Vashifcha, and a girl who was released from slavery, Sheniftu o Sheniz Gairu, who were redeemed or converted, or Nishtachru, or released, when they're older than 3 years old, so that if they were raped, they had not they're no longer were of the age where the psulim grow back, which is under 3 years in a day. Kesuvos Amona, the Kesuva is $100. Psulim, and there also is no tinus psulim against them. Even if they claim they're psula, there is no tinus psulim. Eizli psulim min hanisuin. What is a psula min hanisuin? Who is this woman who's a psula after a full marriage previously? Rabbi Yochanan, she was in the chuppah. And then the witnesses testify that she hadn't have relations. Obviously, her husband dropped dead shortly after the chuppah, or something to that effect. So, even though she was fully married before, she's not considered to have had relations. Rabbi Yossi said, now Hodamara, this teaches us a fundamental thing. Our Mishnah. If you marry a woman with the assumption she's a psula, and turns out she's a bu'ula. She still gets her ksuva of $100. That's an interesting thing. In other words, it means a woman who you married, stam a woman off the street. You married her and she said, I'm a basula, right? And it turns out she was a basula, she still gets $100. Because it's the same thing as our Mishnah. Our Mishnah, this woman claimed she was a basula, right? We said, and so nevertheless, she gets $100, and she doesn't lose that $100, even if they find out that she was a ba'ula. So Rabbi Yossi wants to extrapolate that that's true about any woman. If you assume she was a ba'ula and turn out she's a ba'ula, she still gets $100. Nasa Isha, similarly, if you marry a woman with Cheska Shelo Zinsa, you assume she never had any licentious relations, and you're the first one. Venim Tish Zinsa, turns out she was Misana. Ain't a Mekachtos, Lapsida Miksuva Mana. That's not a Mekachtos, that she should lose a Ksuva of $100. Now, this is not so pasha to me. I actually didn't look up the halach, to be honest with you. But it's not so simple to me that this should be true, because it would seem to me that there's a difference between a woman who was already married beforehand, so that already diminished, like the Gemara said before, there's a chen aspect. Now, she doesn't have the chen, and that's why her ksuba should be $100, right? And she doesn't lose that, even if it turns out she wasn't a basula as she promised, she was ba'ula, because anyway she's damaged goods. But it's not so simple to me, the extrapolation the Gemara is making, which is a woman who was purported to be, pristinely pure, and it turns out she wasn't pristinely pure. In that case, maybe she loses her ksuva altogether. But nevertheless, Yerushalmi's inference is that since in our Mishnah she purported to be a psula, there was eidim that she wasn't a psula, right? That she was a psula, and turned out she wasn't a psula. She gets $100. So the Yerushalmi extrapolates from that to all situations. Says anytime a woman was found to be a bu'ula, even though promised to be a psula, she still gets that $100 as a ksuva.
And the default position would be not to give any money at all. That she'd go out without any money.
We don't say that. Right. We don't say that. We don't take that default. Basically, there is no case like that then. There really is no case where she loses a ksuva altogether. She only defaults down to 100. Okay? Says more further. Rabbi Lezer asks like this. Habal shivcha. Now here all the Rishonim and Achronim changed the girsa from Mishucheres to Mishumeres. Shivcha who's had a warranty though. Most shivchas they released over age 3, no guarantees, right? But she had a warranty. She was pristine. I know how they warranted this. You know, who said she didn't chop her right on the side at some point? But all right, they warranted her. Ma, what's her status? Now, haba'al. There's a big question. What's the Gemara? What is the issue the Gemara is asking about? But from language, haba'al, opposed to somebody who marries, somebody who has relations with, it's an indication, according to most Achronim, it says we're asking about her knas. Somebody rapes or seduces a shivcha who was warranted to have been pristine and not to be a basula, so does she get a knas from the rapist? Okay, Shmini Mado, it's here from this. Yochel abal shivcha ramis. Yechayav. Do we say if somebody has relations with a shivcha, a woman who's still a shivcha, right? Is Yechayav to pay knas? No. Talmud Lomar, Mahori Marena Lo Lisha. He should take her speedily for speedily and with dowry to be a wife. As sheyesh lo havaya ba, somebody with whom he can have marriage, contact the marriage, that person gets a knas. You also shivcha, and here instead of the word omi, the Achroim say it should be aramis. A yotzer shivcha ramis as opposed to a shivcha knainis or a ramis she'ein lo havaya ba, which she has no kedushin, right? Now says the Gemara, mipnei she'ein lo haba havaya. Why is the marriage not a valid marriage? Why is there no knas? Because there's no marriage. But it sounds like that's the only impediment. But were it to be a case where their marriage would be a possibility, so then yesh lo knas, then there would be a possibility of knas, even though she was a shivcha. So if she was a shivcha, she loses her cheskas besula. We assume she was not a basula. So it must be that there are indeed cases where shivcha can be mishumeret, and then she gets a knas if you have relations with, if you rape or seduce her, right? Because what's the case with shivcha mishumeret, who was released?
Maybe the knas is that he has to marry her.
Yeah, but it seems like the two things are connected. The marriage and the knas are connected. Says the Gemara, and from this we can extrapolate kol sheish knas, kol sheish knas yesh ksuva. Says knas yesh ksuva as well. Rabbi Yehuda, v'chibi knas adover totally. Do you think are ksuva and knas linked to each other? Harei bogeres, a girl who's over 12 and a half. Ain't no knas. If somebody rapes her, seduces her, there is no knas. Uksuvasa masayim, yet she gets $200 as a ksuva, and vice versa. If a woman is warranted to have been a basula even after she was fully married to somebody else, because there is edus, yesh knas, so she does get a knas. So the two, but despite that, ksuvasa mana, ksuva is only a mana. So therefore, you have no proof that her ksuva is $200. They're not necessarily related. Knas is one thing, and ksuva is another thing. And never the twain shall meet. Could be she doesn't get a ksuva of $200, she gets a ksuva of $100. Furthermore, it says Rabbi Zira, the truth is that you have no right at all, even for knas. Because it could be that the only time you give a knas, maybe that price which says that im yesh ba avaya, she gets a knas, that if she's susceptible to marriage, she gets a knas, that's only talking about a girl who was redeemed when she was under 3, right? And that's what he says. When they converted or released, less than 3 years old in one day. So it says maybe that's the case. So and maybe in fact if shivcha mishum meres, but released after she's 3 years in one day, maybe in fact she gets no knas whatsoever. So Malaysia said he doesn't like that so much. He says, Rabbi Mona said, if they're converted or redeemed under 3 in one day, Kisrael and Yisrael, there's no chiddush. So therefore, it seems like he wants to say that in fact it's a shivcha mishum meres who was released over 3 and 3, because otherwise there'd be no chiddush. And therefore, it comes out it's not clear. There is no conclusion to the sugya. The sugya stops here, but it seems like the Gemara is inclined to say that Shivcha Mishumeres would get a knas, right? As long as even if she was released over 3 years and 1 day. However, ksuva is not linked to that, and she will not get a ksuva of $200. She will only get a ksuva of $100. Okay, because she doesn't have the status of a woman who was a psula who was a woman who's a psula as Yisrael from birth. Okay, says Mar or from under 3. Says Mar suma of island is shlem times psulim. If a girl is blind or a girl is an islandess, there's still times psulim. Now, of course, you're wondering what the chiddush is, right? Mishum sumul soimer, mishum mer suma ein times psulim. If a girl is blind, the husband can't tie against her times psulim. Why not? Mataima. My Tadra Meir, who says you can't tie times psulim. Ani Omer, I say matzah v'ibeit. He fat psulim, but he then, since she couldn't see what was going on, he took the psulim and absconded with them, destroyed them. So therefore, he doesn't have times psulim. Ma time the Rabbana. That's the case. What's the lat Rabbana? Yichayli latov, so she can grab. It's kind of an interesting thing to imagine. I don't think you should dwell on it too much, but immediately after they have relations, she says, "Okay, give me the sheets." So that way, what? Tug of war. Yeah, kind of romantic first night. Anyway, so they had the more functional views of marriage. So
you have the witnesses right outside.
Yeah, the witnesses are outside the whole time. That's right. Right, Mayor. So what does Right Mayor do with that? Takish, he should grab onto the sheet. No, he could, without grabbing onto the sheets, he has another way of disposing with her psulim by using saliva to dissipate it in the sheets, especially if there's very little blood. So that way, so he can cause her problems regardless. So therefore, we generally don't give the summa times psulim. Tani. This is a very similar Gemara, actually. This Gemara to the Gemara we had again, the Yavamis. How long we assume goes by before a Yavam did Bia? How long can he restrain himself? Tainas Basulim Ad Shloshim Yom. Up to 30 days, the husband can claim that he had relations and they didn't find for his wife Basulim. After 30 days, we say he should have come earlier. No, he's got to come the next day, because we say a person doesn't restrain himself more than a day, he must have relations with her already, and if he had relations with her already, and he's good and mad, he would have come. We don't give him any time. Manaka, what do we talk about this more? If he talk had relations, miyad, then immediately has to go to the basin. And if he didn't have relations, the carbonated takes out the next 2 words, even though we can fetch them in, but it's not necessary, we can just take them out. Even if it's after several days, right? Even after 60 days, if he didn't have bia. So says Mar, you're right. But we're talking about Bistam, where we don't know precisely when that bia. Rameir said people can restrain themselves up to 30 days after the chasna, and therefore he's believed to say within the first 30 days, any of those days that he had bia for the first time. Rabban men are animals. I feel that's a person who doesn't even restrain himself 1 day. So the moment we know they had yichud, we assume that they had bia. If he doesn't come the next day, then we say you're just scheming and plotting against her.
Unless she was a nida.
Right, unless she was a nida, or they tried and didn't succeed. Ramir Maushi Adam Nemon Lomar the Rabbi Meir, in a different realm, not the realm of times of Psulim. But according to Meir, says a person is believed that he can restrain himself for 30 days. Can he say, Mati Yatzmi Shloshim Yom? Can he say, I restrain myself for 30 days? It has sosis of Lach Tuki. So that a kid born 7 months after the marriage, he can say, I don't know if it's mine. Right? Or to make the presumption it's not his, I should say. Because he says, oh, this kid was born in the time period when I didn't have relations with my wife, because I withstood the first 30 days. It's only 6 months since I actually had relations with my wife, so I cannot be the father. Now, that doesn't make the kid necessarily a mamzer, because it could be she had relations, before she was even betrothed. That's not the issue right now. But the question is whether he can cast aspersions on his own fatherhood by saying that I waited. Okay? The Shemini Adol, let's hear it from here. Yivama said, this is the case in the Yivamas. The Yivama says within the first 3 days, lo nivalti, that I didn't have relations. So we assume that she's telling the truth. And we compel her to give her a chalitza, right? Because we assume that she's telling the truth. Now, even if he says he had relations with her, and therefore a get suffices, we say no. We assume you didn't have relations with her, we compel you to do chalitza. If after 30 days she comes and says, I didn't have bia with him, and he says he did have bia with her, so all he has to give is a get. But since she's Shavia Nachikadil the Surah, she put herself in a situation where she claims that he never had bia with her, so she requires chalitza as well. So at this point, if it's after 30 days, we're skeptical. We say a person doesn't restrain himself for more than 30 days, so therefore only mevakshim and shachla. So we request him to do chalitza, but we don't compel him to do chalitza at that stage. V'am Rabbi Eliezer said there, to Rabbi Meir, that's going to Rabbi Meir, right? The Rabbi Meir is the one who said she'll restrain for 30 days. V'am Rabbi Eliezer, here's the punchline. Rabbi Eliezer said, Lo shano etzla. It's only vis-a-vis her that she can claim that he restrained himself for 30 days, and we believe that the first 30 days, when she claims that he restrained himself, that he probably did restrain himself. But not vis-a-vis her co-wife, meaning that in terms of the co-wife can assume immediately when he got her first opportunity he had relations. But it's vis-a-vis herself. She's believed to say, I didn't have relations with him up to 30 days. Because maybe he can restrain himself for 30 days. But vis-a-vis a co-wife can get remarried immediately. Because the co-wife says, even Rabbi Meir agrees, that vis-a-vis the co-wife, we assume that a person doesn't restrain himself, and then he already had relations with the co-wife who was a candidate for Yibum, and therefore the other co-wife who therefore gets off the hook may go on and marry immediately, right? So just like you say over there, she does not have the right to deprive her co-wife of her freedom by claiming that she didn't have relations the first 30 days. So to here, he doesn't have the capacity to cause his son trouble. Rather, we say that we assume that the son is actually his son. In other words, the 30 days are only vis-a-vis the wife, but not vis-a-vis anybody else. Now, this is a fascinating thing. I just want to say off on a tangent here, because there's a halacha in Bava Basra and elsewhere which says that her fathers believe midin yakir. There's a halacha called yakir, kiyam es habachor ben asnua yakir, right? And yakir means that fathers believe to say whether his son is actually his or somebody else's kid and a mamzer. And here, we should believe him because of Yakir, right? Because he could say, this is not my kid. He's believed to say that. Any parent any father is believed to say his kid is not his kid. But obviously Yakir won't apply here because he's not saying it's not my kid. He's saying, I didn't have relations with her. And that is the difference. He's believed to say, this is not my kid if he's addressing the kid directly. But here he's saying, I didn't have relations with my wife the first 30 days. I don't know what his status is. We're supposed to infer, well, if he didn't have relations the first 30 days, then must not be his kid. But that inference we do not make. That's what his conclusion is. That discussion which he's having with his wife is localized vis-a-vis his wife, whether she had relations in the first 30 days and vis-a-vis Tainis Basulim and those issues. But it has we can't extrapolate from that to his credibility vis-a-vis his son. So if he said something directly about his son, he would be credible. If he says something indirectly like this, he has no credibility vis-a-vis his son. The din of Yakir is only when he makes a direct pronouncement. Okay?
Yeah, but that's the next logical inference, is that he says that I didn't relate for 30 days and my wife was pregnant.
It's not a logical inference. It's a Choshen Mishpat inference. In other words, here we're dealing with chazakas, of chiyuv, mammon, ksuva, things like that. So therefore, it's not necessarily a logical inference to infer vis-a-vis the halach of Yakir. Especially since the Yakir in of itself is a chiddush, that fathers believe on the son. So we're not going to take it any more than the chiddush actually in the Torah, which is that if you make a direct pronouncement. Not any more than that. Okay. Halacha Eitzel Chamuv. Mishnah, which actually we've had several times in Kesuvos already, but not as a Mishnah, as a Gemara. Halacha Eitzel Chamuv Yehuda, somebody who eats by his in-laws in Yehuda, Shelo Be'edim, without constant witnesses, and a yochel liton tainas basulim, meaning the Lord loses right to tainas basulim. Neishu misyachimo, because in Yehuda they used to have seclusion with each other. And guess what happens when you seclude a fiancés together, or what's very liable to happen. Period. Echad Amonas Yisrael, Echad Amonas Kohanim. Whether it's a widow from Yisrael, widow from a Kohen getting married the second time, Kesuvos among the Kesuvos $100. However, based in Shel Kohanim, the basin of Kohanim, who were based in to keep up the status of the Kohanim, the basin for the preservation of the lofty priestly status. They would not allow a basula from the priestly family to get married without a ksuva of less than 400 zuz, a ksuva of more than 400 zuz or more. They did not protest this. They allowed this arrogance, I guess one could say, to continue. And the Gemara is going to address that. Now here, this Gezerah, which the Gemara brings down here, is also brought down Bekitzer in the Bavli, but it's much more expanded here. But Ishara Gazu Shmad B'Yehuda. And Bavli does not draw a link between this Mishnah and the Shmad and the Gezerah, but the Yerushalmi does. Originally there was a Gezerah Shmad Yehuda, an oppressive decree by the government. And why did they make such a decree? Again, this is not in the Bavli. They had a tradition from the forefathers, Sheyehuda harag Esav. Yehuda killed Esav, so they wanted to get back. And it's almost like, the Christians, only in the week killed Yoshka, right? Right? So this is obviously, the Tertiary Eretz Yisrael says, this indicates that it's the Romans who made this Gezerah. But elsewhere, their Midrashim will say it's the Greeks who made this Gezerah. Well, what was the Gezerah? The Gezerah is that any Psula gets married, she has to have relations first with the local general, or whatever the case may be, the head, the governor. So in any event, so why they make this Gezerah? Because that a Kabbalah Yehuda killed Esav. The Chsiv says, you have Chabar Efevecha, your hand, Yehuda's hand is against the neck of your enemies. But you and they were making decrees against the Jews to make them slaves. They were raping their daughters. Because when they made a decree, Istartius, their nobleman or officer, should be boiled to have relations with a woman before she goes gets and lives with her husband. Hiskinu, so they made takon, and this is in Yehuda. So Hiskinu, they made this takon, sheyeh ba'ala ba'aleh oda b'veisavia. Interesting. The origin of this takon of the Yichud in Yehuda. Did you ask me about this? So I didn't know, because I didn't know this Yerushalmi. Okay, so he made a takona that first her husband should have, as fiancés, as betrothed individuals, they should have relations with each other. Shemitoch sheyoida, since once she has relations with her husband, she'emas ba'aleh, she's already afraid of her husband. Odhi nigreres, she'll be pulled back. In other words, she won't stay with the Greek guy or the Roman guy. Had she not had relations first with her husband, then she might, she said, this Greek's not bad, not a bad lifestyle. Remember the Greeks, so he wanted to come back. So therefore, we had her have relations with her Jewish husband after betrothal. So then should come back. That's the Korban Eidah. The Pnei Moshe says, a different shop, Pnei Moshe says that since once she has relations with her husband, she'll try and avoid having relations with the guy. Either nigreres means she'll drag herself away from him, or he has another girsa nigderes, she'll fence herself off. But it's not so much that way from the next line of the Gemara. Although you can parse the next line to make it go like the Pnei Moshe, but it reads more readily as Korban Eidah. And what it says, Mikomakom ein safali boil istaratius. Anyways, she's going to have relations with the istaratius, right? And that's going to ruin her. So what point is there to have relations first with her Jewish husband? Says more, that won't ruin her because anusahi, she is raped. V'anusa muteres lebesa, and a rape victim is allowed to go back to her house, in other words, to her husband. Okay, that's good for regular Jewish women. But what about kohanos? Right? Kohanos, even if they're raped by a goy, they're still forbidden to husbands. Mayu also, so what would they do? Matminos. They would be hidden. So this is where we had Mino Apanosis, so why don't we hide even the regular Jewish women? So you call Yaitse. If they're all hidden, so they'll go look for them, right? So let's say we only hit the Kohanos, so it wasn't so obvious.
Why don't they have secret Kiddushin before, and then it could be a legal bia before the general case?
Well, they had Kiddushin, but they didn't have Nisuin.
No, I mean Nisuin.
I don't know, I guess because Nisuin had a cold, because then they would come. Just say maybe there was a chance that they wouldn't come.
Private ceremony.
No, the Gemara is going to talk about that. Yeah.
If the decree was that the Asteritus would be bold chila,
Yeah.
then once she already had relations, wouldn't that then she shouldn't have to then go to the Hagamor?
Maybe that's part of what the Pnei Moshe means, but it seems to the Gemara that they're willing to take second dibs. The main thing is that they got some part of the action. So it says the Gemara, so if they would have hit everybody, yeah. So if they would have, so Malchus Shama v'Ilim Misarvin, they would both get mixed up and get caught together. Now, they used to make chas. They used to make kiddushin and mishtos for the chasnas, and they used to make it on the sly. Kol migros b'yir. If there was a sound of millstones in the city, Mishter Sham, they knew there was a chasna in the city. That was like, I guess the simon was, I didn't even think of this before. It says, Rechaim b'tzavoro v'yasuk l'Torah. It says a guy who gets married, it's like he has a millstone around his neck, how's he going to go learn Torah? So they wanted to make a simon. Hey, another guy's falling victim to the millstone. So they ground the millstone as a simon that a guy is getting married. Okay? Or there, if there are a lot of candles lit before a chayil, so then everybody knows Shavua ben. There's a bris milah there. There's one interpretation Shavua ben is Shalom Zachar. Most interpretations are bris milah, and that's why we have the Afal Pisha Batal Ashmad Aminik Lo Batal. And even though the Shmad is canceled, the minik is not batal. We light candles by bris milah to this very day because of this. And he says here that that's one interpretation. Actually, there's another interpretation which is that even though the Shmad was batal, the minhag of Yichud in Yehuda was not batal. That's actually more in line with the Karban Eidah and the Pnei Moshe here. They say that what minhag was not in this batal, that even after these Greeks and Romans went away, they still had Yichud in Yehuda. And the Gemara says elsewhere, the reason why they had Yichud at this point is they share libo gospel. It's like premarital counseling, that they should have some relationship with each other. But relationships very often went downhill to relations.
Do you know anyone that lights candles at bris milas?
Yeah.
Because of this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Kaloso Shrav Yeshua, and as a result of the minhag not being batal, it's amazing the Gemara actually tells us this. I'm amazed that the one actually tells us. The daughter-in-law of Rav Yoshia, Nichdasa Muberes, she went to her chuppah pregnant. Isn't it amazing the one actually tells us that? So the minute continued, and the minute continued with the same results. Okay, Tani, we learned going back to our Mishnah. It said Amona Masayim. Amona gets 200 zuz. This is not actually our Mishnah, but this is a contradiction. We learned bright Amona gets 200 zuz. How could this be? Tani, we learned in our Mishnah, Echad Amonas Yisrael, Echad Amonas Kohanim, because Seder is actually a different base, but it's like our Mishnah says, both Amonas Yisrael and Amonas Kohanim, they get, this is also part of the Kasha. They get 200 zuz. How could that be? Some Rabbi Yosef said, I'll tell you. Mistabra makes sense to say this. How do we reconcile these prices with our Mishnah, which says Amon only gets $100? Mistabra Bas Kohen Yisrael. If a Bas Kohen marries Yisrael, and this is the second time No, still the first time around. Still the first time around. Actually, I'm not sure, oh no, all right, I made a little mistake. Let's go back to the last line on the previous page. Tanya Amana Masayim, one bride says Amana 200. Tani Echra Amana says Achra Amana Kwanim, because that they both get 100, so it's a contradiction. So how do we reconcile this contradiction? So Rabbi Yosef said, Mistabra Bas Kohen Yisrael. It says like this. When it says in our Mishnah that they used to take $400 for the daughter of a Kohen, so it makes sense to say that that's a Bas Kohen who's marrying Yisrael. So there, Tikveh, she gets $400 for her, as opposed to $200. Sheshivta Goyver, because her tribe is the one which collects, because they're Choshev, right? Bas Yisrael Kohen, however, if the Bas Yisrael marries a Kohen, Lo Tikveh, her Ksuva is not $400, just a regular $200. Lo Mistaya is not enough for the Slika L'Kuhuna. The Kunta isn't good enough that it should be Choshev enough for her that she's going, she should become a Kohenes. El Tema, the Tikva, rather you want to go further and say that she should get $400? HaChutzbeh. It's Choshev enough that her husband is condescending to marry her. You want to give her $400 for her Ksuva? I said, Lo Mistabra Do Elo Chalifin. And Yerushalmi the lo very often is a contraction for Do Elo. So Lo Mistabra Do Elo Chalifin doesn't make sense to say but rather the exact opposite. Bas Yisrael Kohen, if a Bas Yisrael marries the Kohen, Tikveh, she should get $400 as a Ksuva. Why? The Slika the Kunta, she's going up and she's becoming Kohenes. Bas Kohen, however, Bas Kohen is marrying Yisrael, Lo Tikveh, she shouldn't get the $400. The Nechisa min Kunta, she's going down and losing her Kahuna. So if we have a machlok, it's where they get the $400. Is it a Bas Yisrael to Kohen or a Bas Kohen to Yisrael? Rabbi Yisrael Boon said, now getting back to the previous case, actually, let's talk about all the cases. Bas Yisrael to a Kohen, Bas Kohen to Yisrael, and even by an Almona, who's getting remarried, they doubled everybody. 200 to 400 and 100 to 200. Why is that? According to the Bryce, which says that Almona Bas Kohen gets 200. Very strange. But Chazal sanctioned this in order that everybody should stick to their own shevet. It's an amazing concept, because who cares? Nowadays we don't really care, but Chazal did care, and therefore they sanctioned the Kohanim raising the ante to 400 in order, and 200 by Amona, in order, according to the Bryce, which says that they raise the ante even by Amona, in order to preserve the lineage in Am Yisrael. Kohanos should marry Kohanos and Israelios marry Israelios.
I seem to recall that something.
We have a Gadata Gemaras which say that somebody shouldn't
stay within their
should stay within their tribes, but this is more halachic. It's actually telling us that they change the value of the ksuva based on that. Anyway, it's matters that we don't change the value of the ksuva regardless of who's marrying whom. We don't know really who's Kohanim, right? We don't know who's Kohanim either, so therefore we don't change it. Okay. Hanosi Isha below Matzal Psulim, but somebody marries a woman and he doesn't find by her Psulim. He'll marry, she says, you're tough luck. Misherastani Nasti, I was raped after we got betrothed. And it's your field which was flooded away. Meaning it's your tough luck. Because I got raped under your watch. So therefore it's your loss. Woman, he says, Baloney, Loki El Achaloy Rastich. It's before I betrothed you. Now, not a mekachtos that the kedushin is bata. Rather, it should get $100 for a ksuva, not $200 for a ksuva, right? So Gamliel Rabbi Lezer she's believed to say it was after the marriage. We do not subsist on her say so. We assume that she was bu'ula before the betrothal. And she led him astray. She could bring proof for what she's saying elsewise. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked a question. He said, if that's the case, like our ain't times psulim low krem gamliel krebi lezer krebi Yeshua. It seems there's no times psulim krebi gamliel nor krebi lezer, rather according to Rabbi Yeshua. Because anytime he says, hey, you didn't have psulim, she says, yeah, but I was raped under your watch, so it's your tough luck. So where do we ever have times psulim? She can always worm her way out of it. So says the Gemara. V'chazer v'amar, then Rabbi Yirmiyah reneged. He said, Yesh Tainas Psulim Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Lezer. No, it's possible to have Tainas Psulim Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Lezer too, but Shotekes, right? Where she doesn't respond. In other words, if she responded and said, Take, that it was Nista, the Misha Nista, Nisa Rasti, Misha Rastani, once you engaged me, so then Take, there is still Tainas Psulim. But Afilu Tame, and then the goes on and says, Afilu Tame Bim Daberis. Even if she speaks out. Bomeris, we're talking about Bomeris Matzav Ebed. If she clashes with him and doesn't answer him directly, I mean, she says, actually, she does answer directly, not indirectly. The way for her to be Zoich is if she says, Mishirastayne Nasti. Well, if she says, Bologna, I had Basulim. He says, you had none, and she said, I did have. They got lost. So in that case, there is a Tainas Basulim. But if there's no Tainas Basulim, she responds to his Tain in a way which parenthers it, in a way which,
It's like a migo
deflects it. But not if she clashes with him. What migo?
The migo is, we're saying we believe her on one time.
No, we're not saying that.
Sure.
No, we're believing her. She says, "Mir standing there nasty." We don't believe her if she says, "I had and I lost." Miko, that she could have tied him. Mishra standing there nasty.
We don't believe in the second one at all.
Right.
Oh.
We don't believe her that. That's the point. So says more. Wait a minute. Bomeres motzim a few tamim daber there's utena minutes. Why shouldn't believe when she says motzim v'ibed? Now, actually, if she says motzim v'ibed, the reason she's believed, it should be because of that halakhic principle of bari v'shema bari adif. Bari v'shema bari adif means that she's clear, she's adamant, she says she knows. He doesn't know. He says maybe it happened after you got engaged, but maybe not. So bari adif. But the person who's bari is superior. Now we pass, and that's only true if the person who's bari has a mik or a chazaka. It's not just enough to have a stronger taina, you have to have evidence for your taina. It doesn't have to be the evidence of Eidim, but it has to be mik or chazaka. So here, if she says, so the Gemara is asking, let her be believed if she says, Ebeid u'matzah, Ebeid, right? It got lost, but I did have Psulim, because she's still a bari. She knows what happened. She knows she was a psula. And she claimed she was a psula, right? Why is that not sufficient? Granted that he's claiming she wasn't a psula, but he doesn't know under what circumstances.
Well, how credible is she to be a witness?
Well, Amisha says she's credible, so why is she credible even if she says Ibedu Matzah? That's someone's question. So says the Gemara, no, you can't say that. Leis Yachil. Damar Abilu B'Shem B'Lezer, B'Lezer said name Reb Lezer, Matzah Pesach B'Sul, if you found the opening open, also the Kaima Mishum Safek Soita. You're not allowed to keep her because she's a Safek Sota, right? It's the question whether she was a Soita. So, in other words, if the reason why she's not believed, if she says that Avad, is because unless she addresses the point of her not being a Safek Sota, right? Because he's afraid that she's a Safek Sota, because he says, listen, the Pesach was Pasuach. And that's something which we can't take away from him, because he's Shabi and Nafshi Chaticha Disura. Says, I found it open. So, and once we say believe him on that vis-a-vis himself, we also give him credibility vis-a-vis causing her to lose her ksuva. If she just goes against him, as we say in Hebrew, rosh berosh, head on, and says, no, I was a psula, it won't help her. It won't help the situation. Because he's bound to live by his own perception that he found the Pesach Pasuach. The only way she can undermine that is if she can farend for. She could say, you know why you found the Pesach Pasuach? Of course you found the Pesach Pasuach. But not because I'm also, but rather because I was raped after I got betrothed to you. So she's got to give a response which addresses the Pesach Pasuach issue which she's confronted with. So to just deny it, to go into denial, won't do him any good, and therefore does her no good. But for her to say, yes, you found the Pesach Pasuch, but this is why you found the Pesach Pasuch, in that case we give her credibility. And that means that as long as she must say, not Ebaid, that there were Psulim they got lost, but she must say the Taka were no Psulim. And the reason why that happened was the reason why it still permits me to remain with you. Okay?
Does it do him any good regarding the Ksuva? Or not doing the Ksuva?
Excuse me?
Does it do him any good making his claim?
Yeah, the Pnei Moshe brings down it. Once we believe him vis-a-vis himself that he has to divorce her, we also believe him to cause it to lose ksuva, unless she can directly address the issue of Pesach Pasuch. Yes.
eBay is a direct denial.
Right, and that's bad. Okay, because she has to address the Pesach Pasuch issue.
And eBay is not.
No, because she's just saying that you're lying or you're wrong. She has to be able to say you're right, but this is the answer why it's like that. Okay? So, Hachid Marna Menace. I have a question. Here it says she's believed, right? Ran Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer say she's believed, right? V'acha itmar, and really the Gemara explains it right here. I forgot, the Gemara itself explains it. Hachid Marna Menace, here it says but she's believed, but she says Mishra Stein and Asti. V'achid Mar Ena Menace, here it says she doesn't believe what she says, even Umotza. So it says more, Taman, you have a place? Taman, Yushnei Moidim, Shapesa Basuach. Taman Shei Moidim, Shapesa Basuach. Where they both admit that the Pesach is open, just she can answer, that's the only case we believe her. Not where there's a direct contradiction between what he's saying and what she's saying. Okay. Tamzin. Now we have an interesting comparison here. Hoyu Ba Mumin. Turns out she was disfigured. And this is, of course, carefully hidden by the Shadchanim, right? They let on this. Hayab Mumin, Voda Vesavia, and they found the Mumin in their father's house. Now she's already betrothed, but there was no Nisuin yet. Hab Tzarech Levi Raya, the father's being a Raya that they happened after the betrothal, and not before. Why? Because otherwise they say, Kanimtza, Kan Hoya. If they were found in the father's house, they happened on the father's watch, and therefore it's a mekachtos, the kedusha is null and void, right? Rabbi Eliezer asked Rabbi Yochanan, very interesting. Oh, but the important thing is the Mekilin Ephraim says the important thing is the end of the brisa. The end of the brisa there says, the end of the Mishnah says, Nichlin salu shus habal tzarech lavi raya. What happens? He only found the moon once he brought her home. He brought her home and found that she had some strange deformation. So at that point he loses. He's got to bring a proof that the moon was here even when she was in her father's house, because otherwise you say, also kan nimtza kan hoya, was found in his house, it's his on his watch. And if a moon, of course, develops in a woman after marriage, it's too late to cancel the marriage. So if it's found in the father's house, we assume it happened before the betrothal, and the betrothal is null and void. And he has, if the father wants to sustain the betrothal, he has to bring a proof. If we find it after the Nisuin, and it's in the Chassan's house, we assume it's the Chassan's problem, and the Chassan has to bring a proof that it's there before in order to try and cancel the marriage.
Even though it's obvious that this is a pre-existing condition, I mean, he brings her home and there's a scar that looks like it's been healed.
That's okay. That I guess we probably would say, but that's not talking about that kind of moon. Talking about the type of moon which can develop on the spot. Yeah. Okay. So David says to Gemara, I have a question. That which says over there that she's believed if they find it in the husband's house to say it's new. So it's not like Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer, not like Rabbi Shua. Rabbi Eliezer Shua Rabbi Yochanan Masnisin Rabbi Gamliel Rabbi Eliezer. It sounds like that Mishnah is only like Rabbi Gamliel, like Rabbi Eliezer. The low Rabbi Shua, not like Rabbi Shua, because like Rabbi Shua we say we don't believe her. So then he should be believed to say it was there before. Armalesi said no, Divrei Kolhi. It's different. Everybody agrees. Shani Mumin. Mumin are different. Shadark only volate. Did you done Marv yet, all of you? Yeah. Did you done Marv? Because Marv is now. Shani Mumin Shadark only volate. Mumin, even Rabbi Eliezer would concede that we can be mipi anuchayim, that we can list. I mean, even Rabbi Shua would concede that mipi anuchayim we can give her credibility and say that it just happened because Mumin occurs, spontaneously any time. So therefore, it could have just happened recently. Right? Okay. So, Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yisrael said, Makamadnan, before we had this discussion, Chame Rabbanan, I saw the rabbis, Medamu Mumin L'Bsulin. They made a comparison between Mumin and Bsulin. Ilan Yafin Min Alain, they learned parameters of this from that, then Yafin Alain of that from this. Bsulin and Mumin, first up, how do we learn Bsulin from a Mum? Now, everybody bangs their head against the wall here. So, rather than bang my head against somebody else's wall, I decided to create my own wall upon which to bang my head. Okay, so I'm giving you my pshat in the Gemara, not like any of the Achronim here. Okay? Says the Gemara, how do we learn B'sulin from Mumi? Shim Bo'ale Oda B'Beisavia. He has related, now, the premise which I'm going to put into the Gemara, which is no worse than any of the premise any of the other Achronim put in the Gemara, is that here it's about a katana. Okay? A katana. If he has in Bola B'Beisavia, he has relations with her, and she's still in her father's house, and she's still a katana, the father's got to bring proof that it happened after the betrothal, right? Because otherwise we assume it's from before it happened in his house, kanim sakanoya. So we assume that it's his problem, and therefore there's some mekachtos, right? Mumin mibsulim. On the other hand, we learn mumin from bsulim. The other way around. What's mumin mibsulim? She'im nodula mumin saving mishenichnas l'rishuso. Now, she got mumin, and we're not sure when the mumin came. We don't know, because we found the mumin in a way where it's unclear what happened on the father's watch or on the husband's watch, right? In that case, and here, she claims, she's a G'dola, and she says, Bari, that happened when I was in his house. Now, Ktana has no Bari, right? She can't claim she's a Ktana. Her father has no Bari, because he doesn't know, because he's not the girl. So therefore, if he wants to claim that it didn't happen in his house, or I'm sorry, that even though it happened in his house, it happened only after the betrothal, and it's the groom's problem, so he's got to bring a proof. But now we're talking about a case where she's a G'dola, and she could tie a Bari. She says, I know when I got the movement. And then, even if it's in the case where we're not sure, because it's a suffix, so Habal, Tzarech Lavi Raya, the Baal's got to fend off her Bari. Okay? So we learned, what actually came out is we learned Besulim from Mumin, that by Mum we're usually talking about a case where there's no Bari, because the father's talking on behalf of his daughter. And therefore, a case also by Besulim, where the father's talking on behalf of his daughter, there's no Bari, he can't say Misha Nis Arsa, in there, what's the word, Misha Nis Arsa, what's the Nansa, that she was raped after the Erusin, because he has to bring a proof for that. He's not a Bari. How is he supposed to know? So that's how we learn Besulim from Mumin. And how we learn Mumin from Besulim, that just like Besulim, where she's an adult, and she claims Bari, our Mishnah says we give her the power of credibility. So too by Mumin, if she claims Bari, we give her the power of credibility as well. Okay? So then the Baal would have to for it. I mean, Elaine, Besulin or Besulin, and this is Mina Besulin. This is the Gemara just expounds on how we find that out. We see that from Besulim. We learn out this case from Besulim. Besulim v'chi batlu lo ve'savia batlu, by Besulim, even though she lost the Besulim in her father's house, because on the wedding night he finds she's not a Besula, right? Nevertheless, right? You say, well, she's a Bari, the husband's got to bring the proof. So too by Mumin, so about like about the husband has to bring a proof that her Bari is inaccurate. So the bottom line comes out that we learn that where she's a Bari, we believe her, even if they're even though it seems like the questionable whether in fact it happened on the husband's watch. Maybe it happened on the father's watch or on the fiance's own watch. Nevertheless, by Bora we give her the credibility. That's how we learn out Bumin from Besulin, and we learn out Besulin from Mumin that where she can say anything because she's a Ktana, and the father is also not a Bora, he's a Shema, so then we don't give credibility to her or to her father unless they have ample proof. Okay? Let's go a little bit further because we started late. She says, by the way, tomorrow night there's no yeshiva, so we don't have to learn here. It's up to you guys, so we'll talk about it later. She says, he wants to learn here. If Yukalovit's here, I'll take it here. We'll do what it takes. She says, Mukaseitz. Okay?
Yeah, I'll be here. Yeah.
She says, it comes after the wedding night, and he says, dear, I didn't find any Basulim last night. So in any event, she says, Mukaseitzani, I lost them through accident with a baseball bat. She thought, or hockey stick, more appropriate, I guess. He says, no, you had relations with somebody. Now, he's not trying to answer her upon himself. He's just trying to get out paying ksuva, right? She's believed to say mukaseitzani, and therefore she continues, she gets her ksuva. Rabbi Yeshua, we don't believe her. She's a drusa. She would assume that she doesn't get her ksuva. She had relations with a man. Until she brings a proof.
But he makes himself asur to her by making that claim, doesn't
he? No, he claims it was before we got married. Now, actually, the problem in the Mishnah doesn't specify amounts, so that's what the Gemara is going to get into. Amar Elazar said, the Reb Meir. Our Mishnah is like Reb Meir. The Reb Meir Omer Mukaseitz Suvas Masayim. The reason the Reb Meir says Mukaseitz gets a full ksuva, that's what she's claiming, and he only wants to give her 100. So that's the machlokes. Rabbi Gamliel says she gets 200. Rabbi Gamliel says she has 200. Rabbi Shua says she only gets 100. Rabbi Yisrael said, "Vavin savrin meimar." We wanted to say it slightly differently. We wanted to say that if a woman was married as a basula, she was assumed to be a basula, and then she's found to be a ba'ula, so she gets $100, like we said at the beginning of the night. And our mission is to tell you about where he didn't know that she was a ba'ula, and therefore it must be that if you take a woman who is a psula, assumed to be a psula, and then you find she's a mukaseit, so according to Meir, she gets $200 opposed to $100. That's the machlokas. So she should get $100 if she was a drusasish, but she claims she's a mukaseit and therefore she should get $200 like her Meir. So the Gemara is passing that she's believed, and that's what he's about to explain. What's the machlokas? B'shekinsa b'chetzkas mukaseit. We assume she was a mukaseit. I'm sorry. Where she was assumed to have been a mukaseit and she got married. Having said means this is our havamina, and actually we're going to reject it. Man, we thought originally, where did Rabbanan argue about the size of the ksuva of mukaseit? When you marry her, assuming that she's a mukaseit, so then it's not knowing that she's a mukaseit. So Meir says she still gets $200, and Rabbanan say only $100. But we thought erroneously, as it turns out, if you married her, assuming she's a psula, it turns out, surprise, she's a mukaseit. After a Meir modeh, even a Meir can see she only gets $100. But our Mishnah proves that premise is incorrect. From that which you learned our Mishnah, she's saying, no, I'm a mukaseit. And he says, no, you had relations with the man. So if she anyway goes down to $100 because she didn't tell him ahead of time she was a mukaseit, so what's the machlokas in our Mishnah, right? Hadamaras, this teaches us, since there's a machlokas which she's claiming, machlokas between him and her, which she's claiming she was a mukaseit, even though she didn't praise him with this ahead of time. Hadamaras teaches us, afilu kitza b'cheskas besula, even a married woman, assuming she's a besula, the name says mukaseit, and it turned out she's a mukaseit, he machlokas. There too we have machlokas. Rameir Rabbanan. Rameir says she gets $200. Rabbanan says she gets only $100. Now Rabbi Yirmiyah has a slightly different version. He says if you marry a woman, or not slightly, significantly different, you marry a woman assuming she's a psula, and it turns out she's a mukas eitz, then even Rameir agrees she gets $100. She goes down. However, and here's where he differs significantly with Rabbi Yossi. If you marry a woman assuming she was a psula and turns out she was a be'ula, zilch. Arguing on our premise from before. And that's how Rabbi Yirmiyah interprets the discussion of Gemara. Rabbi Yirmiyah Shem Rabbi Zira says, lo market. He didn't say like Rabbi Yossi. Eliyahu mes mukas eitz ani. She says I'm a mukas eitz. Uksuvasa. Her ksuva is it should be mana, not Muslim. Ksuva is $100. Vuomer, and that's what she's saying. No, she's fighting not for $200. She's fighting for $100. Vuomer, he's saying no. Lokio jusa sishat. You're jusa sish. Ve'en lachalai klum. And I don't know you a thing. So according to Rabbi Yossi, we had before the machlokas where she get 200 or 100. According to Rabbi Yirmiyah, the machlokas should get 100 or nothing, right? So again, what the Gemara has words about. If we're talking about where she married her, assuming that she's a psula, that she comes out to be mukas eitz. So after a mayor moida, so then what is according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, even a mayor concedes that she downgrades to 100. And if we assume that at the time of the marriage that she was a mukas eitz. Venin says mukas eitz, and she's found to be a mukas eitz. Now, the Gemara is actually being preposterous here. The Gemara knows it. What do you mean? If he marries her mukas eitz and found she's mukas eitz, how do you know she's mukas eitz? Says more nikro b'pes basur ben be'etz ben ba'odam. If you know does the husband know if it happened to be by a hockey stick or it happened by somebody else having relations with her? So therefore, says the Gemara mamanavshach. Why? How could she? If he married assuming she's a psula and she's found to be a mukas eitz, or he married assuming she's a mukas eitz and found she's a mukas eitz, no matter what, her ksuva is $100, right? How is he going to prove that she was drusas eitz to downgrade her to 0, right? So Rabbi Yirmiyah, so in any event, the Gemara never answers this question. But that's the bottom line. Rabbi Yirmiyah says that she's trying to save $100, and he's trying to make her lose that $100. How does he know? The Gemara says, I don't know how he knows, but he claims he knows. Rabbanim Shem Rizir Lu Amarkein, he argues on both of them. He says, our mission is talking about something else altogether. He says, Eliyahu mes mukas eitz ani. She says, I'm a mukas eitz. Kenit nesimach, and I told you ahead of time, dear. Don't you remember I told you I'm mukas eitz? Vuomer says, no. Lo ki ela drusa sishat, lo is nesimach klum. No, you never told me anything of the sort. You never made any condition with me. You never told me anything ahead of time. I just assumed you're a basula. So that's the machlokas. In that case, who do we believe? And we say, according to Rabbi Zira, we say she should have made a condition if she was a mukas eitz. Talk if a woman is a mukas eitz, she gets $100. But she should have made a condition and told him about it. And then she does get $100. If she just deceives him and doesn't say anything ahead of time, she only gets 0, according to Rabbi Zira. So that's machlokas, did she say anything ahead of time or not?
Right. What did she do? Write it in the ksuva?
Yeah, write in the ksuva. Mukas eitz, we do that nowadays.
Oh, yeah?
If a woman's not a basulta, they don't write basulta in the document. They write either, if they're really crass, some people are, they write bu'ulta. Usually they'll write just itasa, which means woman. But if a woman's not a basul, you don't write basul in the ksuva. There are those who paskin, or there are those who paskin, though it's a minority opinion, but it is done sometimes, that even a woman is not a basula, you can write basulta, and he's saying, I'm willing to commit to her as if she's a basula, even though she's not. But l'maisa, b'derech klau, we don't do that. B'derech klau, we write itasa or bu'ulta. There's even one nusach, I forget what they write, something very degrading. They write like zonoto, something like that.
And this is for first marriage.
Her first marriage, yeah, because she depends on her history beforehand. Okay, bottom line here, there was a big machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yossi says, you doubt if a woman was soon to be and she bound to be a bula, you downgrade by 100, but 100 she does get. That's what he said at the beginning of the evening, which I wonder if there was actually Rabbi Yossi. I remember there was actually Yossi. Now Rabbi Yirmiyah argues, he says, no. If a woman was assumed to be, the Takis Rabbi Yossi on Hayam and Alf, who said that at the beginning of the evening. It's the same Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yirmiyah argues that. Rabbi Yirmiyah holds, no, if a woman was married as a psul, soon to be a psul, and she was a ba'ula, she downgrades to nothing. If she's a mukaseh, she downgrades only to 100. But if she's a ba'ula, she downgrades to nothing. Okay? Alright, let's just go a little bit further. They said the similar idea. They saw it schmoozing with somebody. And they said, who's this guy? Ish plani v'koinu. So and so is a kohen. No, it's a kosher kula. Go. Now, we're coming here, let's read that man, she's believed. We don't believe it. We assume that the guy who she was consorting with was a nasin or a mamzer, apostle of kol, and in fact, therefore, she cannot marry a kohen. She's not to marry a kohen because we assume that he was not a good guy. Mama daberes, what's talking? Why can't she talk to anybody she wants? Niveles. It's a euphemism. Means she had relations. For lamatz nina medaberes, lashon naki Rabbi Yomer. Next word naki is superfluous. Rabbi spoke in a clean language, but it means what you thought it means, and we'll stop here for this evening.